we've lost a sense of community, and so that people are often looking for a framework to understand society. And I think our modern society has kind of been in one crisis after another. And when societies are in crisis, that's when cults can thrive and recruit, because people are kind of on edge and trying to understand what's going on, like during the pandemic and when people were locked down.
Can you explain to us the notion of totalistic cult? What does it mean?
Well, totalism is the term that I think Robert J. Lifton first introduced into this field of study. He is a psychiatrist. Actually, I think he considers himself a psychohistorian. And so he was the first person to study the thought reform program in China under Chairman Mao, which is where the term brainwashing comes from, because that word in Chinese means wash the brain. Anyway, that's a whole other discussion. But so Robert Lifton talked about totalism, meaning that you have an environment, again, like I was saying about my transcendent ideology, you have an environment that gives you everything and that has complete control, right? So we can have a totalistic society, like say North Korea, right? Which we would probably consider a totalistic society, or Germany under Hitler, right? And so totalism just means, or totalistic cult just means that it fits all the criteria of creating this sort of a closed system where people are being changed and what I call as a sociologist re-socialized, and everything is all about the belief system and especially about the leader.
So based on your research and observation, if we hold a little bit for a moment a mirror like to ourselves, to our societies, what does the success of cults tell us about our modern societies?
Well, I think it tells us a few things. It tells us, for one, that there will always be people who will take advantage of other people. And I think it tells us that in a way, we've lost a sense of community, and so that people are often looking for a framework to understand society. And I think our modern society has kind of been in one crisis after another. And when societies are in crisis, that's when cults can thrive and recruit, because people are kind of on edge and trying to understand what's going on, like during the pandemic and when people were locked down. I mean, that was a time when, people spent a lot of time on the internet, and they started becoming part of these movements that probably a year ago they never would have thought of. But it's because they were at odds. It was like, what is happening to the world? That there's this giant pandemic. So I think it's a combination of this sort of loss of a sense of community, and especially in America, too much individualism. I can't speak for other countries as much, but certainly in America, we also have the issue of what I call the dumbing down of America, whereas our educational system is absolutely pathetically awful. And so people aren't getting the kind of education that
the public one.
Pardon?
Right? The public
yes,
one.
The public education, yes, which is the vast majority, right? And so people aren't getting the kind of education that they used to get, where they learned critical thinking and they learned basic history and science, and everything's kind of up for grabs now. And people, I grew up in a working class neighborhood, and I in a town called Milwaukee, which was a factory town back in the day. And I went to one of the worst high schools in the city, right? It was the white working class high school, and then there was the black high school, right? But we were like the second worst high school. And nevertheless, I got an excellent education. right? And I was able to get myself to the university on scholarships and graduate with honors. But so today, that's not happening. You know, the schools are no respect, paid too little, have difficult situations. And then there's so much nonsense from the fundamentalists fighting against things that are taught in the schools that it leads people to grow up without this solid sense of knowledge and science and the things that are grounding. And so I think that also, at least here in America, adds into why the cults are so successful in their recruiting.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that because I was born in Algeria, which is not a very capitalistic country and not very individualistic. And then in my early 20s, I moved to France, where I continued studying and I worked for some years. I stayed 10 years total in France. And yeah, I was shocked by the individualism there. It was absolutely shocking. Yeah, capitalism is turning people into machines, basically. You just work like crazy the whole week.
Mm-hmm.
During the night, you try to get some sleep, recuperate, and do in the weekend the same. So yeah, people don't have time for themselves, including like for spirituality stuff, not necessarily religious, or for, I don't know, self, how do you call it?
Self-improvement.
Yeah, self-improvement. Yeah, things like that, thinking about what you want to do and things like that. So yeah, it makes sense that people will be more receptive to these leaders who know very well the situation, right? They know that there's so many people who are so thirsty for these kinds of
Exactly.
beliefs, messages, and yeah, they take totally advantage of that. Yeah, it really makes sense to me. And one of the reasons why I left France is really, one of the reasons, yeah, is really this one. It's the individualism. I say often it's the number one religion in France and in the West, it seems to me. And
yes, I agree.
Yeah, it's because it's the best way to get people to like be good good agents of capitalism, basically. So it leads me to the next question, really.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, despite the unequivocal danger of cults, isn't there sometimes extreme responses to cults, like the Waco incident in the US? So aren't these extreme responses to the cult phenomenon a way for society to project its fears of propaganda and indoctrination and control, when these same things are going on in these so-called self-proclaimed democratic societies? Yeah, isn't there an element of projection and maybe like symbolically killing the fears that people have constantly, and that they like they suspect they are being manipulated all the time?
There may be some of that. I can see where you're going with that. The reality is there have been very few incidents like Waco, which it is still debatable what really happened there, who started the fire, whether it was the federal authorities or whether it was someone inside the compound who set the fire, so we can debate that. I think what's true about what you're getting at is that in general, our society, and especially people in power or people who may have any capability of doing anything, don't really understand what cults are all about, and don't really understand the kind of commitment ties them so deeply into something where they could end up like the Heaven's Gate cult, sort of, quote, willingly committing suicide to go with their leader to the next level, right? So I think when the authorities move on these situations, which is pretty rare, they come at it with the wrong perspective, and they don't consult enough with people like me who are authorities who could help them understand what's going on. On the other hand, the groups that have been for most part, the groups that have been confronted by the authorities were engaged in criminal activities. So there is that. But again, I think there needs to be a lot of education for people to understand what this whole phenomenon is about. And I think that's been a little bit better lately with some of the documentaries that have been coming out and some of the programs that aren't just looking at the sensational part of cults, but are really trying to look at it humanely and trying to understand things from the member's point of view, and not just focus on the leader and the sex and the, whatever, but really trying to understand that social dynamic. So I guess that's a roundabout answer to your question.